You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome to Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan. Have we got a show for you? Woo. We're gearing up for the annual Women's Media Center Awards Gala on October 29th. And if you're in the New York area and want to come, all the information about tickets, etc., is on the Women's Media Center website, womensmediacenter.com. So today, my guests are all involved with the gala. MSNBC commentator Joy Reid, who is this year's host for the awards, and Amma Asante, the honoree for directorial excellence for the film Belle. Then, an exclusive conversation between our brand new special correspondent at large, Pat Mitchell, herself a multiple award winner, and multiple award winner Katie Couric, who will be presented with the Lifetime Achievement Award at the gala. All very festive and fascinating, too. But first, we need to look inside the headlines. One headline this week that has received, in my opinion, far too little attention and criticism was the announcement by Facebook and Apple that they plan to offer their female employees a $20,000 benefit to freeze their eggs for later use with in vitro fertilization. Now, there have been some criticisms about this. They include the significant but understudied risk of egg retrieval for women and the dearth of evidence about potential long-term health risks to children born as a result of the egg freezing process. But even the Center for Genetics and Society, which has come out against it, hasn't included certain other critiques that are feminist critiques, including the fact that the pressure to defer childbearing that the policy represents and Silicon Valley's companies' lack of attention to family-friendly workplace policies, including paid leave and schedule flexibility for better work-family balance, these have gone by the wayside. Instead, you're supposed to, with your body, make up for the lack of such policies. And so far, there has also been very little focus on a critical concern that egg retrieval poses serious health risks to women. Getting your eggs frozen is neither simple nor safe as a procedure, and retrieving multiple eggs involves injections of powerful hormones. Some of them are used off-label and never have been approved for egg extraction. The short-term risks range from mild to very severe, and the long-term risks are uncertain because they haven't been adequately studied, even though the fertility industry has been using these hormones for decades. But the hormonal drugs used to hyperstimulate ovary production can cause what is known as ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome, and mild cases are characterized by nausea, bloating, and discomfort, but serious cases can require hospitalization for intra-abdominal bleeding, ovarian torsion, severe pain, and deaths. Fortunately rare, but nonetheless deaths have been reported. So paying for egg freezing is being represented as a benefit for women, but it is that discouraging women from balancing work and family is really a benefit to the companies. So hands off our bodies. Really, how dare they? And now for our first guest. The host of the Women's Media Center Awards this year is Joy Reid, who is a guest today. Joy is the host of the Reid Report on weekdays at 2 p.m. on MSNBC and is the former managing editor of thegrio.com, a weekly online news and opinion platform devoted to delivering stories and perspectives that reflect and affect African American audiences. And Joy is also well known as a commentator, political commentator, on The Chris Matthews Show. Welcome, Joy. Welcome to Women's Media Center Live.
It's great to be here, Robin.
Well, it's an honor to have you here. I'm such a fan of yours, and it's lovely to be able to actually interview you, although to interview an interviewer is highly intimidating, I have to tell you.
It shouldn't be at all. My name is Joy. That means I'm easy.
Well, I have to say right at the top, one of the reasons I love you is that you are the only person, when you're being a commentator on the Chris Matthews Show, you are the only person the dear man shuts up for.
Chris is great. First of all, I have to say that not only is Chris a great guy, what I love about him is that he's so passionate about what he's doing.
That is
and
true.
You can tell that he loves every minute of that show. So he's having such a great time.
No, he is. He is. It's just that it's a very different kind of interruption than Charlie Rose, who answers all his own questions. But Chris just, never stops. And then he periodically says your thoughts, and then he goes on. And I watch the guests trying to handle this. And you're the only person who, when you're talking, you continue talking, and he quiets down, and he listens.
It's interesting because we think so much alike. Yeah, I think we think so much alike that a lot of the time I'm probably saying something that he agrees with, and we just think alike.
No, I think there's some other mystery going down there. I don't know what it is, but I've heard other people start by saying, yes, absolutely, Chris, and establishing agreement, and they still get interrupted, but not you, and it gives me hope. It gives me hope for men. I mean, if a pale male can learn, then that's a good sign. And anyway, you are going to be the host, hallelujah, of the Women's Media Center Awards this year. And I thank you, and we're honored, and we're so looking forward to it.
No, it's really great, and it's going to be not only great to just be there with all of these terrific dynamic women, but also with women who've really paved the way so much for women like me. I mean, just between Barbara Walters and Katie Couric, you're talking about just seminal careers and women who've done so much, even for me to be able to do this. Obviously, Gloria Steinem. I mean, it's really just such a great group of people that it's going to be an honor to be in the room, let alone emceeing. So I can't wait.
Well, right back at you. And another one that's tremendous fun is the Young'uns on the other end of the spectrum, the Social Media Award, which is we call it the People's Choice Award, because it's the one award that we don't choose, that is chosen online. People go onto the womensmediacenter.com and vote, and it's for a blogger or an online activist or an online writer or something like that. And they're always younger and outrageous and funny and smart, and they completely blow away the myth that younger women aren't interested in feminism.
No, and it's what's interesting is that feminism is having this really interesting rebirth, and some of it even is around like the Beyonce moment. That's been really interesting because younger women had their own unique interpretation, but they're really running with it and actually running boldly with it in a way my Generation X women, I don't feel did. I feel like there was kind of a walking away from feminism during, my sort of college and post-college years that is the complete reverse of the way it is now. Younger women are owning it.
You're absolutely right. And you know who is in the vanguard, I assume you know because you're part of it, is young black women. The most feminist voices online are young feminist black voices in Black Twitter, Crunk Collective, just so many, and they're using the word feminist, which women of my generation sometimes shied away from. They're affirming it. They're outrageous, and they're pissed off for all the right reasons, and they see the deep connections between sexism and racism. It is just wonderful.
Yeah, and that is a change, too, because, I can say from my own experience that I think a lot of times black women had a sort of weird tangential relationship to feminism because it was seen as something that was really more of a white woman's thing because it was more affluent women who had the time and the leisure to worry about those kinds of issues, whereas black women have always been in the workforce, have never really had that dichotomy between the stay-at-home and going out into the workforce, and so it was seen as not relevant. But now I think even with things like Ferguson, with the civil rights movements that you see growing up, you see a lot of black women and even people on the tech side, like Black Girl Nerds, that are owning the relationship between racial issues and gender issues. And then, things like abortion rights disproportionately affect women of color. So you're seeing women of color, step up and step forward in a way that I've never seen, at least in my generation.
That's right. And nobody is buying into the myths the way that they used to. I mean, there were black women involved from the very beginning of the women's movement this go around, and it's just that the media chose to cover the white folks, and so that now that nobody's buying into that myth, and the energy and the leadership is coming from women of color, it's a very exciting time for an ancient feminist who's 112,000 years old, like me, going on 113. Just you in your years as a journalist, coming out of a film background, you studied film, both as a woman journalist and as a woman journalist of color, you must have had your share of your slings and arrows of outrageous sexism and racism. And yet
oh, absolutely. Yeah. And then even in and out of the media industry, you have the whole moment where you're kind of not taken seriously for two reasons, right? In the case of being a woman of color, and sort of assumed to not know what you're doing or what you're talking about. I had years when I was blogging where somebody who actually was a friend, in the new version of the word friend, somebody you haven't ever met but that you talk to online, right?
Yeah, it's a little strange.
Right. So I had one of these friends that I got nominated for a blogger award on the liberal side in Florida, and this friend who is a liberal male blogger, white male blogger, they emailed me and said, "Hey, listen, we would love to nominate some people of color for this award too. Do you know any?" And I was like, "Really?"
You're kidding.
He assumed from my style of writing that I was both man and white.
My God.
And it's a Reid report, so who would know, right? I mean, I didn't have my first name. I was just blogged as J. Reid.
Right.
But he assumed that it was a white man because I was talking about politics. I wasn't talking about, quote-unquote, women's issues or just limiting what I was talking about to issues of people of color. So that was the assumption that was made.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. And I think it's a tragic but good thing as somebody who cut her political eye teeth in the civil rights movement. That not that the tragedies that initiated Ferguson and all of the other such situations happened, but that at least in the wake of them, there's this entire new breath of air that's going down, and maybe finally, the country is ready to actually begin to start to initiate a conversation about race and about what has happened primarily to the black community. We did a roundtable recently on the show of the 4 or 5 women from the Why We Can't Wait initiative, and it was a fabulous hour. It was just incredible. They're doing town halls, the response to Obama's My Brother's Keeper. And it's such a sensitive, interesting, reasoned response. It's not anti-male in any way, shape, or form, although some people have, of course, tried to take it that way. It is an inclusive, deeply womanly version and vision of the world, and it was a fantastic show.
No, and it's interesting because even the administration gets very defensive when you bring up this point, as myself and other women journalists of color have repeatedly, and not quite gotten an answer as to why My Brother's Keeper was reflexively directed at men. Because you think about the Trayvon Martin moment, you think about the things that are happening with Michael Brown, but you also had Renisha McBride in that same timeline that didn't get the same attention, and you also have so many issues around domestic violence, around poverty. The minimum wage conversation is very much about women of color. So the fact that girls and women were not included in that is actually a big deal. And it is. You talked about the relation to the civil rights movement. This was an issue in the movement that you literally had women who were in the trenches working alongside men, but who were not getting positions of responsibility, not getting opportunities.
That's right.
And that's one of the reasons that you even had a Reverend Al Sharpton support Shirley Chisholm when she ran for president, because his point was that women are just as much dispossessed within the movement as black men are within the society.
Yes, and the additional killer aspect is that black women not only get shot at by police and get all of the things done that are done to black men in the public realm, but most of what happens violently and disablingly to women, any women, happens in the private realm. It's rape, it's battery, it's child sexual abuse, it's all, it's denial of education, it's denial of even down in the lower grades. So what happens to women happens in private. It's not as dramatic, it's not God forbid, being shot in broad daylight, it doesn't, in that sense, if it bleeds, it leads, and it doesn't ever get to lead. And whatever happens to men in any community is always considered more important.
No, absolutely. And I mean, I think you talk just about even just the domestic violence violence. We're talking about things like the NFL. It really does become like a secondary story. And I mean, what's happening right now around college campuses and the issues of date rape, for instance, the whole George Will conversation, it's really insane.
Right. It is
that
nuts.
You're having a wholesale dismissal of an entire group of women's, genuine, fear on some of these college campuses. Is just being dismissed as, feminism trying to get something or trying to destroy, young men who have an opportunity. It's really amazing.
It's amazing that he's still trying to do that. I mean, it's such an old chestnut of an argument. It's amazing. It just takes my breath away. I want to take his bow tie and twist it until either he's having an air problem or he gets sensible, By the way, listeners, what you hear in the background is the newsroom. And so if you're hearing interesting sounds of other voices, it's people at work bringing you the news. Oh God, we've got to stop. There's never enough time. Joy, you are what your name says, and I'm so glad that we're on the same side. Wow, I would hate to be on the opposite side from you. and I still want to know how come you're the only person Chris Matthews shuts up for. But it's wise. It's wise of him to do so, and I look forward to seeing you with bells and whistles on at the Women's Media Center Gala Awards.
It's going to be great, Robin. I can't wait to see you, and it's going to be terrific. Looking forward to it. Thank you.
We need to take a quick break here at Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan, and I'll return in just a moment talking with the winner of the Women's Media Center Gala Annual Awards for 2014 for Directorial Excellence, Amma Asante.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome back. The 2014 Women's Media Center Annual Gala Awards has a category this year for Directorial Excellence, and it goes to the honoree who is our next guest, Amma Asante, the director of the film Belle, and herself an award-winning, very young director who grew up in Britain, the daughter of Ghanaian parents who emigrated there, and who suffered racism and became a child actor, and from thence a writer. And her first film, which we'll talk about, A Way of Life, which she wrote and directed, won 17 international awards. Variety in 2013 listed Amma Asante as one of their 10 directors to watch, and she is indeed, as a woman and a woman of color to boot, a rarity among directors of major films. Amma, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much, Robin. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, congratulations on the award and on the film, and on what is a remarkable career in a young woman.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It's
so impressive. It's impressive, particularly in the context of what you are up against. The Women's Media Center has, annually publishes a status of women in the media, and these are just a few short statistics from the film part of it. There were 565 directors in the 500 top grossing films between 2007 and 2012, and of them, 33 directors were black, and 2 of the black directors were women.
That's right.
And in the top grossing 250 films in 2013, women represented 10% of the writers, 15% of the executive producers, 25% of the producers, and 17% of the editors, but where the real rubber meets the road, only 6% of directors. So we're hoping by honoring you, not only to deservedly honor you, but to give the industry a real shove in the direction of because the whole film the women actors, women writers,
That's right.
women's reality all depends on women being in charge of the film, which comes down to the director's chair.
Yeah.
So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's interesting because those figures that you just recounted, I actually know off by heart. I did a TEDx speech or talk recently, and I actually used your figures to start my talk off.
Yeah.
I mean, we barely register as a percentage point.
It's appalling.
And yeah, it's appalling. And in terms of how we value ourselves, when we look at the fact that we don't even hit the mark on a percentage.
Yeah.
It's a very painful figure in so many ways. And so I use this to kind of start off this TEDx talk and to really explore this idea of how we define ourselves in an industry that does not statistically include us.
That's right. Well, you have to be your own model because nobody is modeling it for you.
That's right. I mean, and that said, I mean, to a certain extent, that has been part of it for me. To another extent, you look wider for your role models, and I think the interesting thing for me when I was putting Belle together, the movie, is that I really wanted to tell a story that was as much about woman as it was about race.
And you did.
You know, there was, yes, absolutely, and that's really was the struggle for me, was to be able to put those two things together and apply value to both and to explore the experience of both. And so, in terms of role models, I look to women of all races and all nationalities.
Well,
those are the shoulders that I stand on.
It was so moving because although racism and sexism are inextricable, they are just you can't. Completely. It's one knot. One reason for sexism is that you have to be able to control what the woman produces from her womb, and because you want it to be a certain race. And I mean, there is no way to separate them, and yet the patriarchy tries to, sometimes quite successfully, to separate them seemingly all the time. So the fact that the film and the directorial lens that you put on that film is so integrated in and has such integrity in all senses of the word was very special to watch.
They're inextricable to me. And, you know, I always feel that for me, it is about standing on the shoulders that have gone, you know, of those who have gone before. I am very, very aware of those that have come before, those who have put cracks in the ceilings, those who allow us to attempt to try and slither through. And at the moment, you know, there's no break in the ceiling. There are cracks, and all you can do is try.
Right.
And so I looked to other women. I looked to black actresses who were also kind of forging the way ahead of me. I looked to writers, female writers, black female writers, white female writers, you know, from all over the world. I looked to those women who were entering into areas of life where we have previously not been welcome or encouraged.
Well, you also looked to your own experiences, which are fascinating. You're still so young with so much work ahead of you. My God! But your first feature film was your directorial debut in 2004, right. A Way of Life, and it won 17 international awards. That was quite a debut. And before that, you did a BBC Two series, Brothers and Sisters, and that was the very first such thing to be written and produced by a black woman in the United Kingdom.
Yes. That's right.
And to Amma, you have to tell me what's fascinating, especially, is that coming from a background where your family was one of two families on an all-white street in Streatham, and you were not welcomed with open arms.
Not at all.
You somehow didn't even intend to be a director. You were a child actor.
That's right.
We have that in common.
Yes.
And we both survived. And
we did.
We're both walking around upright.
We came through.
We came through as artists. So you wrote the prize-winning A Way of Life, your first film, and then came to direct it. But what's fascinating is that you fell into directing sideways, sort of.
I did. I mean, this thing about role models is relevant here, very, very relevant, because, as a child actress, directors were authority figures.
Oh, yes.
They were people who told you what to do, and as a kid, you did as you were told. They were adults.
That's right.
And they were all men. I had one female director.
I never even had that.
Yeah, the rest were all men, and
Pale
they
male.
were all
white.
Yes, pale male, and they were all over a certain age, and they were all very nice, wonderful, wonderful men, but they were all very similar.
Yep.
And so for me, this idea, it didn't even cross my mind that as a female, that as a black female, that this was an area of work that I should be able to even contemplate.
Of course.
Let alone a challenge and attempt to cross boundaries and try and sort of break boundaries.
Of course.
So it was shocking to me. I mean, I am, in some ways, I am embarrassed to say, but if I were my own daughter, I would be telling her not to feel embarrassed. But in some ways, I'm embarrassed to say that when I was asked to direct the first feature film I had written, I thought it was a joke. I thought that I was sort of being led into some kind of trap.
Right. Well, there's no need to be embarrassed by that. It makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah. I really thought that this was some way of getting me to ruin my work that I had written so that people could say, look, we gave her the chance and
right.
she failed.
Right.
And, of course, it wasn't that at all. One of the things that I say when I go to the film schools is that for every rejection you get, for every 10 rejections you get, or 15 or 20, there is someone somewhere. Someone somewhere who will get what it is you're trying to do, who will get it, who will understand it. They may be male, they may be female, but they will get it. And you have to keep looking until you find that person. Evidently, I found that person. And I was looking, but I didn't know I had been looking. I mean, it wasn't until I got behind the camera that I suddenly realized this feels normal. This feels right. This is as it should be. This is about telling stories and completing the birthing of a story. That's right. And this is so natural to me that how could I have not have been looking for this? And so it was almost at the point that I got behind the camera that it sort of everything fell into place, and I thought, whoever she is up there. Thank you for looking down on me and answering a prayer that I did not even know I had vocalized. I feel so blessed that I was given that opportunity, and it was 10 years, Robin, between the first movie and Belle. It despite the fact that I was given that opportunity, it didn't make it any easier.
No, of course it didn't. Of course
despite the fact that I had broken a few sort of boundaries prior to this, it didn't make it any easier to get the second movie off the ground.
You have to keep breaking the same boundaries in some cases.
You have to keep breaking
again
and
again and again. Yes, indeed.
And you fall into, statistically, I was very normal in terms of women directors. On average, it's about 10 years between the first movie and the second movie.
Right.
And there appear to be many, many reasons for this, but there are the obvious struggles that are part and parcel of being a female in a man's world.
That's right.
That will prevent you from moving forward.
And also financing for feature. Women are making greater strides with documentaries and smaller films, but when it's a big budget, real Hollywood type film, which Belle is, that's very unusual that they will, quote, trust a woman with that kind of budget.
There are key areas that we are quote unquote, good at, apparently.
Yes.
And this is what we're told. And to step outside of those definitions is quite difficult. And it was quite a journey to be trusted with the money.
Well,
to direct this.
You certainly deserved that trust, and it's a wonderful example of something that is a great story, a true story, as a matter of fact. And it's like Jane Austen meets the anti-slavery movement. I mean, it's just
Yes.
absolutely thrilling. So we have to go, unfortunately, but I so look forward to your being here and to the night of the gala, and we will have a high old time and celebrate you and celebrate Belle. And celebrate there being more women directors. That's what
more women directors, absolutely. Thank you so much. I'm delighted, and I'm looking forward to meeting you, Robin.
And it is time to drift into the surrealism corner. You may have wondered regarding ISIL. I refuse to call them ISIS. It's so unfair to the Egyptian goddess. ISIL. You may have wondered, where are the women? Well, there are women in ISIL. So much so that now there is a special finishing school for them. This is pure surrealism corner. There's been a number of sources on this, but the one that I'm quoting from was authored by Elizabeth Coles and posted online, and with deep web reporting by Gilad Shaloch. Okay, so what they've done is design a special institute to, quote, prepare sisters for the battlefields for jihad. Called Al-Zawra, the jihadi-style finishing school isn't just for any women, but for those women who are, quote, interested in explosive belt and suicide bombing more than a white dress or a castle or clothing or furniture, unquote. You know, it makes a castle or clothing or furniture sound not bad. Okay, but here's the problem. If you thought in joining them that you were going to get to do the fun stuff and kill and go splat and bang, 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 wrong. To prepare women for their roles as mujahideen, Al-Zawra offers classes in 5 areas, including, wait for it, yep, you got it right, domestic work such as sewing and cooking, medical first aid, Islam and Sharia law, weaponry, and in a surprisingly progressive twist, training in social media and computer programs for editing and design. The Institute's website also offers tips for women who want to train for jihad on their own. For example, get fit. Take a half hour every day to go jogging. Did you know jogging trains you for jihad? Well, now you know. Keep adding distance every day in order not to be a burden on your jihadi brothers. They also recommend that women watch YouTube videos on how to use various weapons. That doesn't seem terribly professional. Here's another tip. Learn first aid. Watch videos of first aid operations on the internet and try to apply them on your younger sister. Oh boy, that's a poor kid. Here's another one. Learn how to sew. You are going to sew the clothes of Allah's soldiers. Go to your mother and ask her to teach you about the sewing machine. Learn how to cook. How? Open a Word document and write down, quick recipes for cooking. Open the internet. I didn't know it was closed. And copy recipes from it. You are going to cook for Allah's soldiers. In the long run, these young idealistic women who want to be part of the revolution and do something militant and find themselves cooking and sewing and cleaning up are going to get cranky. And at some point, some malcontent, some wonderful malcontent is going to turn around at some point and say to her boyfriend, "This is not why I joined the revolution." And you know what? At that moment, the real revolution begins again. It's time for another quick break here at Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan, and don't go anywhere, because in just a moment, Pat Mitchell, multiple Emmy Award winner and now the senior special correspondent at large for this program, is going to be interviewing Katie Couric, who is the awardee this year of the Pat Mitchell Lifetime Achievement Award from the Women's Media Center. So that should be quite a conversation. Stay tuned.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
And we're back. Women's Media Center Live's new roster of correspondents is headed by our special senior correspondent at large, Pat Mitchell. Pat is the executive vice chair of the Paley Center for Media, and until recently, when she stepped sideways rather than down, she was president and CEO of the Paley. She had come to the Paley from PBS, where she had been president and chief executive officer, the first woman, first producer and journalist also to hold that position. Pat has worked for 3 broadcast networks over a 3-decade career in media. She's worked for several cable channels as well, with success both in front of and behind the camera as a reporter, news anchor, talk show host, White House and special correspondent, producer, and executive. In the 80s, she established her own independent production company. In the early 90s, she became an executive in charge of original productions for Ted Turner's cable networks. And over the next 8 years, as executive producer, her documentaries and specials received 37 Emmy Awards, 5 Peabody Awards, and 2 Academy Award nominations. Pat was the founding chair of the Women's Media Center's board, and in her name we named our Lifetime Achievement Award, the Pat Mitchell Lifetime Achievement Award. Fittingly, this year at the Women's Media Center Gala Awards, that award is going to Katie Couric. Katie Couric, who was a household word for 15 years on the Today Show, also was the first woman to solo anchor a weekday network evening news broadcast. Here, in an intimate conversation, are Pat Mitchell and Katie Couric.
When the Women's Media Center announced to me a couple of years ago they were going to do an award in my name, I first of all had never had that happen, but I thought, all right, that's fantastic. Then I can turn around and honor the women that I admire the most. And that's why this year is so very special to me, because I get to give the Pat Award, as the Women's Media Center now calls it, to Katie Couric. Katie, you are the absolute epitome, the model, the everything. If I were defining the woman who stands for the values and the work that I admire the most, your name is at the top of the list.
Well, I'm so thrilled to be accepting this award, and really looking forward to the event and just being with you, because Pat, you've been such a great friend and such a huge supporter through the years. My career has been larger than I ever imagined, but it's not been without its challenges and, great high moments and some difficult moments, and you've always been there with such sage advice and such loving support. So this is really the icing on the cake for me to a friendship that has been, several decades in the making at this point.
It really has. And I thought for a moment we go back to that beginning for you, because I do remember the first time that I saw you on the air, and then the first time that we met in person. And I distinctly remember thinking, this is one of those special people, one of those personalities that the audience is going to love, because they're going to believe her, love her, trust her, value her judgment and insights. And that's actually turned out to be the case all of your career, although, as you say, there certainly have been challenges. But one of them, when you came into the media world, the television world, some of the barriers for women had dropped, but not all. What were the ones that you experienced?
Well, I think when I started out, I was a desk assistant at ABC News, which basically meant I made coffee, distributed the newspaper, and to show you how old I am, changed the ribbons on the teletype machines. They even had little cotton gloves that you would put on so you wouldn't destroy, everything you were wearing. And I think that was when television was really changing a lot. there were more, there started to be, I guess it was the beginning of the change. There started to be more women as producers, as production assistants, but I would say for the most part, they still hadn't penetrated the upper ranks of broadcast news. There weren't that many producers, very few. I remember Bettina Gregory was the correspondent, Cassie Mackin was the Capitol Hill correspondent, Ann Compton, of course, worked at ABC News as she did her entire career when I was, answering the phones and making coffee. And so, I did have some role models to look up to, but still, it was just the beginning. And I think doors were opening, but there was still some resistance, I think, to having women in full-fledged, certainly in leadership roles, and then in even sort of middle roles as producers or assignment editors. So it was still pretty male-dominated, but things started to change slowly but surely. I mean, I definitely ran into sexism at the beginning of my career, and I would say to a lesser extent I have throughout my career, but I always laugh that I got into television when harass was 2 words instead of 1. And, I did face, certain experiences. I remember one executive at a radio station where I worked asked me if I was on the pill because of my breast size. Well, I know anyone listening is probably shocked because, it's not like I look like Dolly Parton or anything. And then I remember going into a meeting when I went to CNN, and the president of CNN, I was late and I walked in, and I don't know what he had been discussing, but he said, "That's not like Katie. She's successful because of her hard work, excellent writing skills, and breast size." Can you imagine? And
shocked but not surprised.
I was so shocked, and I was so flabbergasted. I actually wrote him a note telling him how offensive it was and that I was going to keep it between the two of us, but that just was an outrageous thing to say to a 27-year-old woman, any age woman, in a professional setting. So, but, I powered through, and I think some of the challenges for me early on were that I kind of looked young. I didn't look like sort of the junior Miss winner that was sort of typically being plucked to be an anchor woman at a local station back in the day with sort of an avuncular older man. And I just had to really work hard and get experience. And what I focused on was becoming a kind of a tough street reporter who could cover any kind of story. So, I definitely faced some of those obstacles early on in my career.
And when you faced those obstacles, were there pressures to stay away from women's stories, not to stand up for women's voices, not to speak up against the kind of harassment that you and so many other women in the media have felt?
Yeah, I think it was just sort of an accepted part of, it deserved an eye roll, but not a complete, examination. I think that, again, sort of the consciousness that was being raised continued, sort of mirrored my career, to be honest with you. And I remember the Anita Hill hearings. I think they were a true watershed moment for professional women, because suddenly, we were talking about, harass as 1 word and not 2. And we were seeing the effects of this kind of treatment in the workplace at the highest levels. And I remember so vividly covering those hearings, and it was almost as if people were saying, "Oh, wait, this is something that affects women. This is something to be taken seriously. This isn't just, wink, wink, part of being in the boys' club in a work environment." So, I think slowly but surely the awareness and the conscious raising has increased, as I said, in a weird way has mirrored my career.
And your career has had so many watershed moments for women, Katie, because, you've been the first many times, and being the first always puts you in a particularly spotlighted position where every single moment and every single thing you do is examined in a different way. What have you learned from those moments in your career that you pass along to other women now?
I would say that, for me, my real first, I think, was, I guess in a way, it was the first time a co-anchor on the Today Show was treated as an equal partner. When I was approached to co-anchor the Today Show with Brian Gumbel, I said to then president of NBC News, Michael Gartner, I don't want to be relegated to cooking segments and fashion shows. I really wanted to make sure, having covered the Pentagon, that I had equal access to serious stories and serious interviews, and that it was a 50-50 division of labor between Brian Gumbel and me. And, I don't know where I found the chutzpah to make those demands at 33 years old, but I just, I felt that I'd worked so hard in local news, so hard covering the Pentagon, that, that should have, that I deserved to cover more substantive stories. That's what I was trained to do. And I remember so vividly in Michael Gartner's office him looking at me and saying, well, what about 4951? And I thought, okay, I'll do it. And I was lucky that I had, an executive producer like Jeff Zucker. Yeah, that
49%
made sure that I had, that I had access to the kinds of stories I wanted to do. And so I think I learned there, you have to ask, right? You have to stand up for yourself. And if you want to see change, and I knew how powerful the imagery of a strong woman would be on a morning show, and I think that's why, I was excited to be the first solo anchor of an evening newscast, because I wanted little girls and little boys to see a woman doing that job competently and effectively. And that was one of the major reasons I wanted that job, because at the time morning shows were considered much more influential in many ways, and certainly, a bigger financial powerhouse than the evening newscast. But when I had an opportunity to do that, I jumped at it.
And in jumping at it, Katie, of course, you jumped right into another huge public spotlight with the attendant criticism and observations. What did you take away from that experience?
Well, that there's still a ton of de facto sexism that is just very culturally ingrained in people. I think that, it was disappointing that so many people paid attention to kind of what I was wearing instead of what I was saying, the same old. And that, I think because I'd come from a morning show and I was female, those were two reasons not to take me as seriously, despite the fact that Tom Brokaw had worked on the Today Show and, certainly had an easier transition to the evening news. I think I learned, though, pragmatically speaking, that change sometimes has to be incremental. I was brought to CBS to kind of really mix things up and to change sort of how an evening newscast is delivered, to make it less voice of God, make it more accessible. And I think I wish, in hindsight, that perhaps I could have taken more baby steps towards that goal, that, maybe allowed viewers to become accustomed to seeing me in that role and made those changes sort of after a period of time, instead of really trying to introduce people to a new anchor, kind of a slightly rejiggered format, and just kind of a little bit different way of doing the news. And I think that, it was, I sort of wish that I had done that in hindsight. And I was an outsider to CBS News. I think that
right.
it can be kind of an insulated culture, and I think that I wish that I had probably cultivated more support from people who had been working there for a very long time, because I think, outsiders were viewed with a certain amount of suspicion in that culture.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, Katie, all the lessons that you've learned along the way and that you're sharing so openly with us today do mirror still the challenges as well as the opportunities for women in media everywhere. And your career has mirrored so much of what has improved and what still remains to be better, and that's what the Women's Media Center has been set up to do. So to get to recognize that your career, which is really just about to take another leap with Yahoo and that move into digital storytelling, again mirroring the changes in media across the entire landscape. So
I think, I think there's room for improvement, but I think anytime we can talk about solutions and things we can do to achieve more parity is a great thing, and I think that's one of the really important aspects of the Women's Media Center. You can't always complain about what is. You have to say, why can't things be better, and how can we make them better? And that's what I really admire about that, about this organization.
And thank you, Katie, for all you've done to make it better.
Thanks, Pat.
This is Pat Mitchell for Women's Media Center Live, and back to you, Robin.
Thank you, Pat. What a great conversation to eavesdrop on. We have to take a quick break here again, and this is Women's Media Center Live, and I am still, consistently, Robin Morgan. And when we come back, it'll be just in time for some fighting words.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome back again. In time to share some fighting words. One central figure that is largely being overlooked in the Ebola crisis and scare is that of the nurse. Nurses have been covered somewhat in the media. They were at first accused of being the source of any spread of Ebola because they were not using proper precautions. Nobody asked where the protocols were coming from. But the nurses mobilized and talked back. Fortunately, the National Nurses Union backed a few nurses at Texas Health Presbyterian Hospital in Dallas so that they came out of their enforced silence and spoke about the lack of procedures, the lack of preparation for Ebola at the hospital, the constantly shifting guidelines, the lack of any advanced preparedness on what to do with the patient, and the lack of any protocol, any system for dealing with Ebola. There probably would not have been the death that occurred and the spread that occurred had there been proper precautions, had the nurses received the training they asked for. The Presbyterian nurses are not represented by Nurses United or any other union, but they nevertheless were warned by the hospital not to speak to the media or they would be fired. This is appalling. It's shocking. And it occurs in no small part because nurses are largely female people. There are, of course, male nurses, but it's such a relatively rare phenomenon that we still refer to it as a male nurse. So we say bravo to the nurses, not only for the bravery they show in doing their average everyday work, the extra bravery they've shown in treating Ebola sufferers, but the third aspect of their bravery, which is speaking out, speaking up, and speaking truth. And that's it for today. If you're interested, my newest essay on women and Parkinson's disease appears in the fall 2014 issue of the newsletter of the Parkinson's Disease Foundation, and it contains information on the initiative that the foundation and I have started on women and Parkinson's across the country. PDF for Parkinson's Disease Foundation, pdf.org/fall14. pdf.org/fall14. Scroll down to where it says Women in Parkinson's Disease and check it out. And join us next week when we'll hear from the online winner of the Social Media Award of the Gala, the one chosen by voters on the WMC website. Remember to visit us at WMClive.com for the archive of all our previous episodes, and be sure to find us live on Facebook, Twitter, and at iTunes worldwide, where you can stream, download, and subscribe to the show's podcast. Portions of this program were taped earlier. Opinions stated here do not necessarily represent the WMC. Here's the family for Women's Media Center Live, WMC President and Executive Producer of this program, Julie Burton, Senior Producer Crystal Williams-Chancellor, and our founding sponsor, Regina K. Scully. I'm Robin Morgan, your producer and host. Thank you for being with us. Meet you back here next week on Women's Media Center Live.
For the smartest talk about news, politics, sex, books, religion, race, and more, tune your radio to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan. Audacious, witty, provocative, informative, and fun. It's Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on WMCLive.com. Talk radio with a brain.